Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. Welcome to my State of the Collection 2022 Part 2 video. Tonight we'll be looking at my secondary watch collection. So let us begin. Alright, so I'm going to work through this box from the top left corner all the way down to the bottom right. First up, we have my Fossil watch that I bought for about $20, and I took the seconds hand off of this just to make it a bit more elegant. This is a quartz piece. It's nice, vintage sized. The hands are great. And look at the dial. There's some texture on there. This is a super classy looking watch. And it looks great on the lizard grain strap. It even has a little faux jewel there on the crown. This watch is really cool looking and a great price. Next up is the Henry London watch, and it also has some great texture on the dial. That crystal is amazing, and the case shape is pretty wild. It's kind of flying saucer style. And look at how narrow the lugs are. As you can see, they're 16mm. This is the strap that it shipped on, and it's actually really nice, so I've left it on there. It's fairly flexible and just looks great on this watch. This retails for $100 and some, but I got this one for $80, I believe it was, from Amazon UK. And look at those hands. This watch is really brilliant, especially for the price. And it also is quartz, but it's a two-hander. Next up is my Citizen watch. And this was also fairly affordable, and look at that strap. That is so cool. As you can see, it operates kind of like it's a Milanese or a mesh, but it's more like a bracelet. I like its vintage size, but it has kind of like the PRX style aesthetic to it. So cool. Let's look at this one on the wrist. So let me take off my pull router, and we'll see what this looks like. Check that out. That is so cool. The strap does like to pull hairs, but I wear it kind of snug, so it's really only an issue when I first put the watch on. Oh, I love the retro vibes to this thing. Just looks so cool. And that rehaut in there, when you're in bright lights, really makes the whole watch kind of sparkle, even though the case is brushed except for that bezel. And look at that dial. This is an awesome watch. Next up we have the Brilliance Smith's Everest. Absolutely gorgeous. When it comes to Explorer homages, I absolutely love this variant. And that crystal, everything but this buckle that likes to pop open is just absolutely brilliant on this watch. Pretty sure at some point I'll track one down with the new clasp on there and maybe offload this one, we'll see. Such a cool watch. Next up we have the one Anacar that I own, and this watch is also absolutely brilliant. Look at that crystal. And the cool thing about this watch is it's almost like an everyday wear watch, even though it looks all dressy. So it's polished around the edge of the crystal, but the rest of the dial is brushed, and it's really solid feeling, especially for a vintage piece. Right now I have it on an inexpensive strap. I should probably get something a little bit more substantial for this, something a little bit nicer. I think these lugs are actually 17mm. You can see how this strap is kind of pinching a little bit. So at some point I'll pick up a 17mm for this. Let me get the hands out of the way here so we can marvel at that amazing logo. Yes. Even the font is awesome on there. I love the Saturn logo. That is super cool. And you can see the subtle texture on the dial there. I love this watch. Next up is my silver dialed Palliot. Look at the case there, how thin it is. This is the second vintage watch that I purchased. I got the black dial one first and loved it so much I decided to go for a silver dial variant. This is on a shell Cordovan strap with this amazing clasp. I just recently bought this strap. I had one like it, but wanted to put one on this watch. Look at that font. Absolutely retro feature. This is probably a Franken watch, but It is so amazing looking and very affordable. Got this for around $100. Next up is my super affordable Pobeda, so another Russian watch. This one does not get nearly enough wrist time. I really ought to dust it off more. It has a very cool nautical look to it. I love the hands and the crazy case shape there. You can see that the crown is all brass now. Look at the case back. It's a little roughed up there. This one's also on an inexpensive strap, but that's fine. That crystal's great. Yeah, this is a great looking piece. And we have the brilliant looking Bulova chronograph that I bought from a friend of mine. It's a thick little guy, but it looks great on the wrist. That dial is amazing. I really like how they did the sub-dials on here, and it's in excellent shape. That crown is cool. And I like the pushers on this too. And there goes the chronograph. Then we can reset it. So on this one, the seconds hand remains a seconds hand even when you're using the chronograph. So it's all just these sub-dials that do the work. That crystal is pretty crazy with the bevel on there. And look at those lugs. Very nice. Next up is my silver dialed Timex Marlin. And if you caught my 30 days challenge, all of these watches should look familiar. I covered these in that series. And if you stick around till the end of this video, I'll let you know what the next State of the Collection video is going to be. That'll be the final one for this year. The Marlins are so great. With those flying saucer style cases, these are definitely vintage size, so they aren't for the faint of heart. I like the font on this, and just look at that crazy dial. The hands are really nice, and I like how the crown is kind of inset there. Makes it really fun to try and wind it, but it has a really cool aesthetic. This is also on a shell Cordovan strap. You can't go wrong with the Marlins. There is also the black dial Marlin. Kind of hard to get those indices to show up. Just like with the Paliots, I started out with the black dial variant and liked it so much I decided to get the silver dial version of it. There we go. Now you can see those. And they even have drilled lugs. And look at how tall that crystal is. So much distortion. Let's check this out on the wrist. Look at how great the Timex Marlins look. I have this one on a strap that I got from my buddy Nick. And this is such a high quality shell Cordovan strap. And look at this crazy buckle I put on it. I did have to give it an extra hole because my wrist is so tiny. Look at how nice those watches look. They're all dressy yet fun and so vintage even though they're contemporary. Amazing. Oh man, the vintage Certina. Sadly, even though this watch is fairly new to me, the Dolce Vita and my brand new Bulova Field watch have been getting all the wrist time. Once my honeymoon period with those watches calms down a bit, I definitely have to dust this thing off. Such a cool looking watch. And one of the watches that I took to Salem not too long ago. It has drilled lugs, nice thin case, and this is one of those two-part screw-down case backs. But that dial and those hands are just phenomenal, as well as that band around the edge of the dial. I am such a sucker for that aesthetic. That is just so cool. Just the overall look of this dial is amazing, and the crystal that's on it is perfect for this design. Oh, so cool, look at that. Yeah. And here we have the Seagull Panda chronograph. I love this watch. This is so cool. And just look at that movement. Absolutely gorgeous. And it looks great on this strap. I'm glad I went with the Panda dial. Usually you see the cream variant, but I wanted to be a bit different, and yeah, this looks just amazing. And it wears a bit smaller than it is on paper. This is listed as 38 millimeters. I measure it at just under that. But let's see what it looks like on the wrist. I'm used to wearing vintage watches, and this one doesn't feel huge to me at all. So it might be a bit small for people who are used to contemporary sizes, but I think it looks absolutely classy and brilliant. And all the touches of red are just amazing. Very well executed. I bought this shortly after I got the Dan Henry chronograph, and it's pretty crazy how much smaller this one looks than the Dan Henry when they're side by side. That is so wild. So far, this is definitely one of the coolest chronographs I've ever owned. Next, we have the Hamilton Bolton, the watch that temporarily replaced the Dolce Vita. I sold off my old Dolce Vita and bought this. As you can see, it does not have a date window on there. It has a sub-seconds and it is quartz, but I like the way it hugs the wrist, and I like how it's all kind of rounded and stuff. The only problem with that is it's not quite the same as a full-on tank watch. It feels sort of like in between, but the dial is brilliant. That curving crystal is amazing. Keep your eyes open for a comparison video between this and my new Dolce Vita. It'll be interesting to see how they do side by side. The hands are cool. I really like Hamilton. So many brilliant vintage watches that they put out, and even in their contemporary lineup, there's some pretty awesome stuff, including this. Next is a watch that I inherited, and this may have actually been a nurse's watch. It's a bit smaller than some of the old military specs like the A11 and A17s, and being gold, it was probably medic, who knows? I've seen one that's kind of similar to this, not quite the same, and it mentioned being a medical watch, so that makes perfect sense, because the seconds hand hacks, and there is that minutes track around the edge there, which is kind of utilitarian, even though it's gold plated, and that crazy crystal that I still need to polish smoother. There's all these little tiny pocks in it, but it seems to run pretty well and looks amazing. Here we have my very first vintage watch. Like the silver dial variant, this is probably a Franken-watch. I mean, look at how perfect that dial looks. I love how thin these are. And those markers that are etched into the dial are really cool. These are such great looking watches. And so affordable. Even the case back is in excellent shape. This was a great deal. And an excellent introduction into vintage watches. Oh, and look at the strap that it's on. Both my Paliots have these buckles. Nice. And this is the toughest watch that I own. An absolute tank. This is the CWC Sapphire variant. So it has up to water resistance and a sapphire crystal and a screwed down crown. So this could go snorkeling with the best of them. I love the CWC, so great. It is a pretty thick watch, and most of the thickness is behind the case itself, so it helps if you have a nice thin strap for it, like this Perlon. It has fixed bars, so even that aspect of the watch is super tough. And being CWC, it has heritage to it. Very cool. And we have the first of my two dirt cheap Seiko Quartz tank watches. Now, there's a debate whether these are Franken watches or not. I have no idea. I've heard people make statements either direction on that. It wouldn't surprise me if they were. These are like $20, but look at them. They're absolutely amazing looking. They're two-handers, which is super elegant. It's like quartz in disguise, except that they put it right on the dial. And look at how elegant it looks on this alligator embossed strap. That's a pretty good deal. Here's the other one that I own. And I'm seeing a pattern emerge here because this was the first one that I purchased. And I liked it so much. What did I do? I went out and bought the light dial variant. When I bought this, I still had the Dolce Vita, if I remember correctly. And so I bought this thinking it would be great to have a tank style watch with the dark dial. And it's definitely dark. There we go. These are such cool looking watches. Now on this one though, I feel like that guilloche pattern on there just kind of makes it look a little dirty because it's so dark. Most of the time it looks just kind of smudgy, whereas in the white one you can actually see that pattern better, but it's fine. And just look at what they did with the sides of the case. Brilliant. And the lugs aren't terribly wide either. These are 20 millimeters. Perfect. And the vintage Movado Museum 36 millimeter, the watch that gets a surprising amount of wrist time. And I have this on a nice lizard strap. And I just love Movado's buckles like this. I had a sapphire crystal put in this, so it's actually pretty tough. And it's in excellent condition. Once I'm done honeymooning with so many new watches, I'm probably going to end up wearing this a bunch again. Yeah, the museum design is just great. And again, it's a two-hander quartz watch. Next we have the Casio A700 that I tracked down on the Milanese strap because I feel like it looks so amazing on this, so unique. It's definitely not a combination that you see very often. And this is such a cool, like, luxury version of the F91. It's thinner, the display is closer to the crystal, which when you see it in person is actually kind of surprising the first time. When I saw it, I was like, whoa, that looks kind of cool how close it is there. Nice. I love how it's just all silver with the slightly darker gray in there. This watch is super cool. I ended up getting this on Zumi's website because it was really tough to find, and it's no longer on their site. I'm not sure where you could get these, if at all, with this particular strap. You may have to get them with the standard bracelet. And here we have the Satina watch, the Cartier homage with an ETA movement in it. We have the faux crystal there. That is really sharp. I'm left-handed, so I don't have to deal with this, but I imagine that could be uncomfortable if it's sitting a little bit low on your wrist. Yeah, because the sharpness on that is no joke. The hands are great, the dial's great, and these are so well executed that in the 70s people would redial them and sell them as fake Cartiers. The lugs are 19 millimeters, so you do have to deal with an odd lug width. Yeah, this watch is great. And here we have my Hamilton tank style watch from the 80s. This is a quartz piece with a sub-seconds dial. And prior to getting my latest Dolce Vita, this was my favorite tank style watch that I owned. It is super elegant looking. These hinged lugs are really interesting, but you do need to have a really flexible strap on this so that they don't just sit like that and dig into your wrist. But the crystal, the super vintage aesthetic of this watch, yeah, this thing's so cool. I feel like we need to get a wrist shot of this one too. Yes, look at that. Hilariously, I have a fossil buckle on here because it's the right size, it makes the strap fit better, and I don't have a whole lot of 14 millimeter buckles. But yeah, that is an amazing looking tank watch. Shortly after getting that previous watch, I found the listing for this Hamilton watch, and I immediately fell in love with it and bought it. I clearly do love me some Hamilton. I love the case shape on this. Just the overall aesthetic of this watch is absolutely brilliant. This one is a manual wind piece, similar crystal to the last one. Looks great on this strap. Yeah, this watch is brilliant. I love it. And last up, we have the Ricoh watch. And look, it's ticking away now that I changed the battery on it. The dial is kind of Bauhaus-y. Look at how thin it is. And we have another faux jewel there on the crown. And Ricoh is a brilliant brand too. Not really a watch manufacturer, but when they did make watches, they were on par with Citizen and whatnot. And you can see why. When I saw the listing for this watch, I saved it to my favorites, but wasn't really sure. But I found myself pulling up the listing and just kind of checking it out every day, and really fell in love with this watch. Had to pick it up. And when I did, the seller sent me a message congratulating me on my excellent taste. I agree, this watch is absolutely brilliant. What a cool design. Alright, so stay tuned for my next State of the Collection video, where we'll go over my primary collection. So there you have it, all the watches I have in my huge watch box. Thanks for watching.